If I'm the Dallas Cowboys coming out of this, I actually feel pretty good. All right, welcome in. It's the Breer Report for September the 5th. We are underway, one game in, 271 games to go, and we are going to start this Friday's Breer Report right there with game number 1 of 272, and that was the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Dallas Cowboys 24-20. A lot of intrigue, a lot of storylines, almost felt like two separate games with a delay in the middle. And so I'm going to give you a couple of my top takeaways. Now, the first thing, of course, is what happened before the game even really got underway, and that was the spitting incident between Dak Prescott and Jalen Carter. I think as much as anything else, if you want to big picture this and talk about what it means, maybe he gets suspended, maybe he doesn't. I think there's definitely a hefty fine coming. Jalen Carter very clearly spits at Dak Prescott here. And this is something that the Eagles have been managing over the course of the 2 years that Jalen Carter has been there. He's not always the most motivated player. He's not always the most mature player. He is a great talent, which makes this a little bit more complicated. And it's the reason why he fell to the 9th overall pick. It's the reason why I don't think the results the Eagles have gotten with Jalen Carter would have played out everywhere. Like if he had gone to a worse team, I think it would have been more of a problem. I don't think the teams that passed on him ahead of the Eagles in 2023 deserve much criticism for it, because the Eagles were uniquely positioned to take him on because they do have an older, more mature locker room. Remember when Jalen Carter came in, he had in that defensive line room Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. So there was no way that he was going to step out of line and not hear it. There was no way that he was going to pull anybody the wrong way with him. But I do think the big picture question here with Jalen Carter is what you do after this year. And you're going to have to make a decision on his 5th-year option, which I'd assume you pick up. Do you look at extending him? The Eagles have traditionally been very aggressive about extending young players. But I do know that there are some people already there that would be uneasy about the idea of paying him long-term because of what might happen, because it would empower him, and because some of these maturity issues could metastasize if you do wind up paying him. So I think what we got on Thursday night obviously wasn't what the Eagles are looking for, but it also is kind of a window into some of the big picture decision-making that the Eagles are going to have to make on Jalen Carter. Okay, as for the game itself, if I'm the Dallas Cowboys coming out of this, I actually feel pretty good, because I think you can say if you're the Cowboys, a couple things that won't repeat themselves happen or go the other way, and you actually probably win this game. I am really hesitant to call the last one, the one near the end of the game, the ball down the left sideline from Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb, a drop. But there were two pretty egregious drops earlier than that, one earlier on that game-ending drive. So is that going to happen again? Probably not. Like, I think CeeDee Lamb is such a good receiver. What we saw on Thursday night was an aberration. Maybe he even comes up with a spectacular one at the end. In a lot of cases, I will not call that a drop. It was not a drop. It was a difficult throw, and it was a difficult catch. And if you pull it off, it's a spectacular play. But I don't put the blame at the feet of Dak or CD. It just would have been a highlight reel play that gets left on the cutting room floor because he couldn't quite make it happen. But there were opportunities to win the game, and I think if you're Dallas, you feel good about the way that the defense bowed up late. With a couple exceptions, of course, their inability to corral Jalen Hurts was a little bit of an issue. On scramble plays, Jalen Hurts wound up running the ball 14 times. On Thursday night. So your ability to contain a mobile quarterback, Jalen Hurts had a lot of key runs in there. But the fact that Jalen Hurts had to run as much as he did, I think is a check in the box for Dallas, that they did a lot of things right on defense without Micah Parsons in there. It's their first game without Micah Parsons, so they're still adjusting. Kenny Clark is still new there, so that's an adjustment as well. And then offensively, I thought they played with identity. I thought the job the offensive line did in their first game post Zach Martin, really impressive. Tyler Guyton at left tackle. You got 2 first-round guards now, and Tyler Smith and Tyler Booker. Terrence Steele right tackle, Cooper Peavy at center. That's a group that now can really grow together. So I feel good about that. I think Dak played a great game. They showed they could run the ball a little bit with Javonte Williams. Health has always been the question with Williams, but so far so good. a lot of good signs for Dallas, just as far as where they're going in 2025 and the vision for what they're going to be as a team. I think you started to see some of that play out there on Thursday night. Even the run defense, look, they gave up, I think, over 150 yards, but they were able to keep a really great Eagles rushing attack under 4.5 yards a carry, which I think is suitable given where they are this early in the season. As for the Eagles, I think the ceiling is there. There were always going to be some adjustments on defense. They lost more on defense than a lot of people realize. No Darius Slay. We saw what happened at the opposite corner, how that became a little bit of an issue. No Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You've got some movement on the defensive line with Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat now gone. They're figuring some things out there. Offensively, without getting a whole lot from A.J. Brown, you did get a big catch there at the end of the game that was a really important one in closing the Cowboys out. But without getting a ton from A.J. Brown, who is maybe the second best player on the offense outside of Saquon Barkley, I think the ceiling's still there. They didn't run the ball as well as they would have liked to. I know that. They didn't throw the ball quite as well as they would like to. I know that. So there's still a lot of meat left on the bone. But this is an Eagles team that, still has a sky-high ceiling. And again, like replacing the number of guys they got to replace on defense and then working some of the kinks out on offense with a new coordinator there and Kevin Patullo taking over for Kellen Moore. They should be just fine. Okay, our second topic for today is the big Friday night game tonight, which is in Brazil. And hopefully nobody has a 2.5-hour commute like the Packers had last year. Hopefully the surface doesn't look like an ice skating rink the way that the surface looked last year. This is a great early season matchup. You sort of wish that for a division game, teams didn't have to go that far away for it. But a lot of intriguing storylines to watch here. And a couple that I'll be drilling down on and watching right out of the box. For the Chargers, it's got to be the identity that they're looking to build. And, one of the things that really stuck out for me when I went to their training camp was the size, is how big a team they look like and what they're doing in year 2 under Jim Harbaugh, the image of the teams that he built at Stanford and at San Francisco and at Michigan is that taking another step? Because we saw it last year. And so in particular, that means for me, looking at what the offensive line looks like without Rashawn Slater at left tackle, Joe Alt moves over to left tackle. How does the right tackle spot look? And then Omarion Hampton at running back. He was fantastic in camp. You may not have heard a ton about it, but they were really happy with where he's at. His vision is something that really stuck out to the people there. For a bigger back, he's got real burst at the second level. And so can Omarion Hampton be for Jim Harbaugh over the next few years what Frank Gore was for him in San Francisco? You'd hope we'd start to see at least some signs of that. So the Chargers, again, do we see the identity that started to come together last year? Do we see it in a big spot, a big early spot against the team that's won the division the last 9 years in a row in the Kansas City Chiefs? As for the Chiefs, I'm not going to come out of this game with any sweeping conclusions on the Chiefs. I kind of view them the same way as I do the Eagles. They'll be there at the end. So, if they're working some things out early in the year, that's generally the way these things go. The one thing I am looking for, though, and obviously they don't have Rashee Rice for this one, is what does a downfield passing game look like? This is something that they really felt like they were going to be able to open up, and they did to some degree last year with Xavier Worthy as a rookie. But the vision for this over the last, really over the last couple of years, or over the last, 18 months or so, has been how do we put the long ball back into our game? And last year the idea was Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy on the outside. You got Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice on the inside. The guys on the outside are threatening the defense downfield, opening up space for the guys to operate underneath. So what does that mean tonight for Brown and for Worthy on the outside? Do we see some big plays in the passing game? And then, if we do, does that open up things underneath for guys like Kelce and Noah Gray and Juju Smith-Schuster? I'm looking for the style of offense that the Chiefs are playing tonight. I think that'll be really interesting because, again, going into 2024 and now into 2025 as they look to get to a 4th straight Super Bowl, is that vision for the team there? All Our third topic, just give you a quick overview of Sunday because there are a lot of intriguing storylines. The first one that I'm going to be looking at is that Pittsburgh Jets game, the quarterback swap, Aaron Rodgers going from the Jets to the Steelers, Justin Fields going from the Steelers to the Jets. The Jets have a really talented young roster, and there are a lot of good players there. And I think a lot of people look at this, and rightfully so, as how well the quarterback plays will determine how far the Jets can go. And I love a lot of the young guys there, even with Oliver Tucker out now, the young tackle combination of Ola Fashanu and Armand Membu. You've got, the skill positions. You got Garrett Wilson. You've got Breece Hall. I think Braylon Allen is in position to have a really big year. And then on defense, the wealth of young talent: Jermaine Johnson, Quinnen Williams, Quincy Williams, Sauce Gardner on down the line, Will McDonald. So what does the quarterback look like? With Pittsburgh, it's obvious, right? With Pittsburgh, can Aaron Rodgers give them the piece that they need to take that extra step? Young offensive line in front of them. There have been some questions there. They feel really good about where they're at from an offensive line perspective. But what kind of difference can Aaron Rodgers make, and what does he look like at age 40? Another game I'm looking at, Detroit and Green Bay. Two edge pieces that I think everybody's going to be paying attention to. What does Aiden Hutchinson look like coming off the broken leg? They felt like in camp he was even better than before. And then with the Packers, Micah Parsons coming in game one. They have the flexibility because they've got real strength on the edge with a couple former first-round picks and Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness there. They got the flexibility to put him in a rotation. Can he make an impact in game one? Love that matchup. That could wind up being one that plays in at the end of the year into tiebreakers, right? So that's an important early season matchup. Another game that I think we'll get some answers in is Houston and the Rams. And here's a name that you're probably not paying enough attention to. Ariante Ursary, a second-round pick out of Minnesota, starting left tackle for the Texans now. He's going to be one of the keys when it comes to how far Houston can take its team. They've won the AFC South two years in a row. CJ Stroud now entrenched as their starting quarterback, but with a new offensive coordinator and some new offensive weapons around him, right? So what does he look like operating with Nick Caley as his play caller? What do the rookies from Iowa State, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, look like alongside a true number one and Nico Collins, like Dalton Schultz in that mix as well? What does the running back position look like with Nick Chubb and Damian Pierce there and Joe Mixon out for the first month of the season? And then the defense, I think, has a chance to be the best in football. So much is going to hinge, again, on that offensive line. And a lot of hinges when you've got offensive line questions on that left tackle position. So what does the Houston offensive line look like against one of the best defensive fronts in all of football? With Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Byron Young and Kobe Turner. So much talent there in that defensive front. Can the Houston offensive line hold up? Because if that Houston offensive line holds up, I think they've got the team. They got the type of roster where they might be able to break through that glass ceiling and get into the Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore tier in the AFC. And then for the Rams, I think they feel like they've got a Super Bowl team. What does Matthew Stafford look like after missing so much time in camp? And then finally, the nightcap on Sunday is going to be fantastic. Ravens Bills. We don't need to say much more than just Ravens Bills. A rematch of the divisional round playoff that wound up becoming a classic with the Mark Andrews drop at the end. The Ravens have a chance to atone here. They blew the Bills out in the regular season last year. That's become one of the really good rivalries in the AFC. Can't wait for that one. We got a fully stocked weekend. And then after that, of course, and this feels like it's a million miles away now, but it's going to come quick, that Monday night game against Chicago, Minnesota. It's fantastic. Football is back. And we got a good one last night. Should have another good one here on Friday night. We will be back next Tuesday to recap everything in the Breer Report. We are into our regular season cadence now, which means we get a Breer Report on Tuesday, a mailbag on Wednesday, another Breer Report on Friday. We'll be doing that each and every week. Can't wait to really get going here, get a full weekend in the books. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.